At 2:03 a.m., my husband whispered Sloane in his sleep, a woman I'd never met. By 2:27 a.m., I'd opened a file that would destroy both their careers. The next morning, they were called into a conference room, completely unaware of who had set the trap. I sat in my architect's office, watching the clock tick toward 9, knowing that in minutes, the glass walls of Argent Apex Consulting would become mirrors reflecting their downfall. They thought power protected them. They were wrong. My name is Mara Collins, and I've spent 12 years designing structures meant to last lifetimes. That night at 2:03 a.m., I learned my marriage had foundations as rotten as waterlogged timber. The whisper came first, soft, intimate, the way Ethan used to say my name when we were 20-something and foolish. But the name that escaped his lips wasn't mine. Sloane. His breath caught after it, a small gasp like someone surfacing from deep water. The unfamiliar cologne on his pillow, something woody and expensive that wasn't his usual drugstore brand, suddenly made sense. I didn't move. Architects learn to observe load-bearing walls before they crack, to spot the hairline fractures that predict collapse. In the amber glow from our hallway light, that safety exit sign I'd insisted on installing when we bought this house in Hollister Ridge, I watched my husband's face contort with whatever dream held him. His phone sat silent on the nightstand, screen dark. Yet when I checked later, his work email showed read at 2:11 a.m. The message from Argent Apex's operations team about tomorrow's client briefing had been accessed, but not from the device 3 inches from his sleeping hand. Someone else had his credentials, or he had another device. Either possibility felt like discovering black mold behind pristine drywall. I slipped out of bed with practiced silence, the same way I'd learned to move through construction sites, testing each footfall before committing weight. In my home office, I pulled out my moleskin sketchbook, the one I used for preliminary designs. But instead of blueprints, I wrote timestamps: 2:03 a.m. Name spoken. 2:11 a.m. Email accessed remotely. 2:17 a.m. His breathing pattern changes still asleep. 2:31 a.m. I begin documentation. The hallway light cast long shadows through the door frame, geometric patterns across my drafting table. In my profession, we call these light studies, understanding how illumination reveals structure. Tonight, that pale yellow strip looked exactly like the emergency exit lights in my commercial buildings, a signal for evacuation. I didn't cry. Tears would smudge the ink, make my notes illegible. Instead, I sketched our bedroom layout from memory, marking sightlines and acoustic zones. If confrontation came, I needed to understand the space like a crime scene investigator understands blood spatter patterns. Cold, methodical, professional. Ethan's breathing hitched again at 2:47 a.m. Another whisper, too soft to distinguish. His hand reached across the bed, found empty space where I should have been, then fell slack. In 14 years together, 2 dating, 12 married, he'd never said another woman's name in his sleep. The unconscious mind, I'd learned in my behavioral psychology elective, doesn't lie. It's the only honest architect of our thoughts. By 3:15 a.m., I'd filled 4 pages with observations, times, dates he'd worked late in the past month, credit card charges I'd dismissed, the new Thursday operations sync meetings that appeared on his calendar 6 weeks ago. Architecture isn't just about what you build, it's about recognizing patterns, understanding how pieces fit together to create a whole. And the pattern emerging in my notebook looked like structural failure. I returned to bed at 3:42 a.m., sliding between sheets that smelled of his stranger's cologne and her name. Ethan didn't stir. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation, each blade cutting through the darkness with metronomic precision. Somewhere in this suburban Colorado house, in the carefully designed life we'd built in Hollister Ridge, the support beams were failing. "I'll inspect the structure," I whispered to the darkness, practicing the kind of cold assessment I'd give a condemned building. And if the foundation is rotten, I'll demolish it myself. The hallway light flickered once, as if in agreement. By morning, I'd know what kind of blueprint to draw. Not for rebuilding, I don't believe in constructing on compromised ground, but for controlled demolition. The kind where you know exactly which supports to remove, in what order, to make the whole thing collapse precisely where you want it. Sloan. The name sat in my throat like poured concrete, hardening with each passing minute. The digital archaeology began 3 days later. Ethan's Google Calendar had become a study in strategic omission blocks of time marked Ops Sync, appearing every Tuesday and Thursday night, always from 8 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Operations synchronization. Even the lie was corporate speak, sanitized and plausible. I cross-referenced his credit card statements against these blocks. Beryl and Birch, that upscale gastropub in Brookhaven District, appeared with mathematical regularity. Always 2 drinks, never dinner. The receipts time-stamped between 11:45 p.m. and 12:15 a.m. after the supposed meetings, but presented as client entertainment on his expense reports. Our Ring doorbell had been recording his arrivals for 2 years. I'd never thought to check the logs until now. The pattern emerged like structural stress points under load 3 consecutive weeks of 1:12 a.m. arrivals on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The car door's acoustic signature, that particular metallic thunk of his Audi, captured perfectly in the camera's audio feed. You're being paranoid, I told myself, but architects don't believe in coincidence. We believe in intentional design. My sister Lena called during her break at Denver Medical. Night shift nurses develop a sixth sense for disaster. You sound different, she said without preamble. Define different. Like you're measuring something for demolition. I considered lying, but Lena had held my hand through our father's death, my 2 miscarriages, the lawsuit that nearly destroyed my firm. She'd earned truth. Ethan's having an affair. Silence. Then, you need proof or you need options. I need facts. Mara. Her voice carried that particular weight of someone who'd watched marriages die in hospital waiting rooms. Before you go down this path, do you want the truth? Or do you want hope? In architecture, false hope is how buildings collapse and kill people. This isn't a building. No, I agreed, staring at my spreadsheet of timestamps. It's worse. Buildings don't lie. She sighed. Noah Keats, former financial investigator, does private work now. He's thorough and legal. Mostly. He won't break laws, but he'll bend them into origami. I wrote the name in my notebook, under a sketch of the Argent Apex logo I'd drawn from memory. Thank you. Mara, whatever you're planning, I'm just gathering data. That's what scares me. Noah Keats operated from a nondescript office in a strip mall, wedged between a tax preparer and a Vietnamese restaurant. His business card read discreet inquiries with no elaboration. He looked like an accountant forgettable face, moderate build, clothes that suggested careful budgeting. The only tell was his eyes. They cataloged everything, the same way I assessed structural integrity. I need documentation, I told him. Legal documentation, timestamps, photographs with metadata intact, geographical markers, nothing that violates privacy laws. Suspicion of infidelity, suspicion of pattern behavior requiring verification? He smiled slightly. You talk like an engineer. Architect, I believe in evidence-based conclusions. Parameters. My husband, Ethan Hale, Argent Apex Consulting, Tuesday and Thursday nights. A woman named Sloan. Sloan Mercer, VP of Operations at Argent. My stomach performed a small structural failure. You know her? I know of her. She has a pattern. This would be the 3rd subordinate in 4 years. Allegedly. Previous situations were resolved quietly. NDAs, transfers, the usual corporate machinery. I felt something cold crystallize in my chest, like watching concrete cure in winter. I want everything documented. Every meeting, Every interaction you can legally observe. Public spaces only. Timeline. 2 weeks. I need enough data to identify the pattern conclusively. Noah named his price. I paid it without negotiating. Good architecture requires investment in proper surveying. That night, Ethan came home at 9:30 p.m., a normal time. He kissed my forehead, mentioned a productive day, asked about my commercial district project. I responded normally while mentally cataloging no unusual cologne, no defensive body language, phone left casually on the counter. The nights he came home on time, he was perfect. The nights he didn't, he was a ghost. I thought about the load-bearing walls in our house, how removing just one would require redistributing weight across the entire structure, every support beam connected to another, creating a network of dependencies. Destroy one connection, and you had to account for the cascade. Working late Thursday, I asked, voice neutral as primer paint. Yeah, ops sync. Sloan wants to review the Morrison account strategy. There it was, her name in his mouth, casual as a paint chip falling from a ceiling small, seemingly insignificant, but indicating rot underneath. That's the 3rd Thursday this month. He shrugged, already scrolling through his phone. Quarter-end push, you know how it is. I did know. I knew exactly how it was. Noah's first batch of photographs arrived encrypted on Thursday morning. The timestamp read 11:48 p.m. Location level B2 Argent Apex parking structure. The image was crisp despite the fluorescent lighting. Ethan and Sloan walking toward the elevator, her hand resting on his lower back with practiced intimacy. Not sexual, but proprietary. The way you touch something you own. The second photo, 11:51 p.m. Them waiting for the elevator. She was laughing at something he'd said, her body angled into his space, breaking the professional distance that should exist between VP and subordinate. His expression was one I hadn't seen in 2 years, unguarded delight, the kind that had disappeared from our dinners somewhere between mortgage refinancing and fertility treatments. The third set came from the Hearthline Suites, that business hotel 6 blocks from Argent's office. Noah hadn't entered that would violate privacy laws, but he'd captured the lobby's digital directory board at 12:27 a.m. The display showed room upgrade authorized Executive Suite 1247, with a partial confirmation number that matched a charge on Ethan's corporate card. He'd expensed it as client accommodation, Morrison account. Morrison account didn't have out-of-town representatives. I drove to Beryl and Birch myself that afternoon, arriving at 3 p.m., when the lunch crowd had dissipated. The hostess seated me at the bar, where I ordered mineral water and sketched the layout in my notebook. 14 tables in the main dining room, 6 in the private area, 3 security cameras, 1 at entrance, 1 over the register, 1 covering the back hallway to restrooms. Table 12, where Ethan's receipts indicated he sat, was in a blind spot between cameras. Professional calculation or lucky coincidence? In architecture, there are no coincidences, only intentional design choices. You dining alone. The bartender was young, maybe 25, with the kind of carefully disheveled appearance that took effort. Waiting for someone. I lied, adding sightlines to my sketch. We get a lot of Argent people here after hours, he offered, unprompted. The executives especially. Good tippers. Must be nice for business. Yeah, though some of them treat it like their private club. That woman VP Sloan, something she's got a regular table. Always brings different guys from her team. Power moves, you know. My pencil stilled on the paper. Power moves. You can tell who's getting promoted by who gets invited to her after-hours strategy sessions. He made air quotes, then caught himself. Not that it's inappropriate or anything, just patterns you notice. Patterns. There was that word again. I left cash on the bar and drove to my office at Solace Atelier. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting clean shadows across my drafting table. I pulled up the Colorado Department of Labor website, searching public records for Argent Apex. 2 discrimination settlements in 3 years, both sealed. 1 wrongful termination suit, withdrawn. The complainants' names were redacted, but the dates aligned with Noah's timeline of Sloane's previous mentorships. My phone buzzed. Another encrypted file from Noah. This time, video. 43 seconds of footage from a public ATM camera across from Argent's building. 11:57 p.m. on Tuesday. Sloane and Ethan exiting through the parking garage pedestrian door. She was adjusting his tie, an intimate gesture that suggested practice. He was looking down at her with an expression I recognized from our wedding video, that soft focus that meant the rest of the world had ceased to exist. I watched it 3 times, noting the metadata embedded in the file. GPS coordinates, timestamp accurate to the millisecond, device identification, legally obtained, inadmissible in divorce court but devastating in a corporate ethics review. A knock on my office door interrupted my analysis. Marcus, one of my junior architects, peered in. "Hey, Mara, you okay? You've been locked in here for hours. Working through a structural problem? Need a second opinion? No, this one requires a controlled demolition." He laughed, thinking it was a metaphor. "Those are tricky. One wrong calculation and the whole thing falls the wrong way. Not if you map every connection point first." After he left, I returned to my notebook, drawing connection lines between data points. Sloane Mercer, 42, divorced, no children, 15 years at Argent, promoted to VP 3 years ago. Pattern of selecting married men from her team. Always ended before exposure. Always resulted in the man's quiet departure or transfer. Ethan was supposed to be different, smarter. Our marriage was supposed to be engineered better than this. I called Noah that evening. I need more. Specifically, I need to know if there's a pattern to the hotel bookings. Already on it, Hearthline Suites has a rewards program. Public-facing website shows platinum member since 2021 for S. Mercer. 27 stays in the last 18 months. Always Tuesday or Thursday. Always the same suite. That's her hunting ground. That's one way to put it. He paused. There's something else. One of Ethan's colleagues, someone junior, reached out to me indirectly. Won't go on record, but suggested you look into who got promoted after their mentorship with Sloane ended. And none of them. They all left within 6 months, transferred, found other opportunities, or were restructured out. I stared at my ceiling that night, mapping trajectories. Sloane wasn't building careers. She was strip mining them, taking what she wanted, leaving wreckage. And Ethan, my brilliant, ambitious husband, thought he was different, special. He wasn't. He was just the next load-bearing wall she'd identified for demolition. The data room took 3 days to construct, not physical construction. Digital architecture requires different blueprints. I created an encrypted folder on a cloud server, password protected with 2-factor authentication, accessible only through specific links I would generate. Like designing a building with a single entrance and no windows, every access point controlled and monitored. Inside, I organized the evidence with an architect's precision. Folder 1 timeline documentation. Every photograph Noah had captured. Metadata intact, arranged chronologically. Folder 2 financial records. Hotel charges, restaurant receipts, expense reports that told their own story of deception. Folder 3 pattern analysis. This was where Sloane's history lived. Noah had been thorough. 2 former Argent employees, both speaking under legal anonymity, had provided sworn statements about their experiences. The first, a marketing director from 2021, described 6 months of mentorship that included late-night strategy sessions and weekend conferences that never appeared on official calendars. When he tried to end it, his performance reviews suddenly deteriorated. He left with an NDA and a severance package. The second, a financial analyst from 2022, painted the same picture with different colors. Sloane's attention had felt like career acceleration until he realized the price. His marriage ended. His reputation at Argent became complicated. He transferred to the Seattle office, then quit entirely. "She picks married ones," he'd told Noah. "Says they understand discretion." I studied Argent Apex's corporate calendar on their public website. Monday, 9 a.m. Quarterly town hall and investor update. All hands mandatory. The perfect stage for a controlled demolition, maximum visibility. Contained environment. No escape routes. The plan crystallized like frost on glass. 3 movements in a deadly symphony. First movement, private confrontation at dawn. Let them reveal themselves under pressure. Record if legally permissible in Colorado it was, as long as one party consented. Second movement, the email bomb, timed for 9:01 a.m., right after the town hall began. Recipients would include the board chair, chief legal counsel, head of human resources, and chief compliance officer. The ethics committee would be copied. Subject line, pattern liability risk, immediate attention required. Corporate speak for a lit fuse. Third movement, legal notification to the spouses of Sloan's previous targets through their attorneys. Not revenge documentation preservation. Building a pattern file that would make any future NDA attempts impossible. I spent Saturday refining the email. No emotional language, no accusations without evidence, just facts, timestamps, and a link to the data room. Dear board members and compliance officers, this communication concerns a potential pattern of conduct that may expose Argent Apex to liability under Colorado employment law and federal workplace guidelines. Documentation attached includes photographic evidence of after-hours meetings between VP Operations S, Mercer, and subordinate E. Hail financial records indicating misuse of corporate resources. 2 sworn statements from former employees describing similar patterns. Timeline analysis showing recurring behavioral patterns over 3 years. Immediate review recommended to minimize legal exposure and reputational risk. The complete documentation is available here. Encrypted link regards. A concerned party, clean, clinical, devastating. I created a second email for Ethan's personal account, scheduled for 9:03 a.m. Your USB drive is in your jacket pocket. Building management has been notified about your parking access. Your belongings from your office will be shipped. Don't come home. The USB drive that was the artist's touch in this architectural drawing. I'd loaded it with the same data room files, but added one folder he wouldn't expect: what you destroyed. Our wedding photos, the IVF consultation records, 12 years of anniversary cards. The offer letter for the San Francisco job I'd turned down so he could stay at Argent. Let him carry the weight of that into whatever meeting room they dragged him to. Sunday evening, I drove to Lena's apartment. She was preparing for her night shift, folding scrubs with mechanical precision. It's happening tomorrow, I told her. She nodded, unsurprised. You need an alibi. I need a witness that I was nowhere near Argent's offices. I can call in sick. Stay with you. No, I need you at the hospital, living your normal life. Timestamp everything. Post on social media. Create a digital trail that shows this wasn't about emotion, it was about justice. Justice. She tested the word like checking a wall for studs. That's what we're calling it. What would you call it? Architecture. You're building something new from their ruins. Nothing new, just clearing the lot. She hugged me then, the kind of embrace that acknowledged ending as much as beginning. Dad would be proud. You know that. Right. He always said you'd build something that mattered. This isn't building. It's demolition. Same thing, different direction. That night, I placed the USB in Ethan's jacket pocket while he slept. His breathing was even, untroubled. Somewhere in his dreams. Was he with her? Did Dream Sloan promise him advancement? Power. The corner office he'd always craved. I studied his face in the darkness, cataloging features I'd once mapped with love. The scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. The way his jaw clenched slightly when concentrating, even in sleep. The wedding ring that still circled his finger like a meaningless structural element, bearing no load. 3:47 a.m. on the nightstand clock. In 5 hours and 14 minutes, his professional life would collapse. Sloan's pattern of predation would be exposed. The glass walls of Argent Apex would become one-way mirrors, reflecting back every lie they'd told themselves about discretion and consensual mentorship. I pulled up the draft email once more, finger hovering over the schedule button. This was the moment of no return, the point where architectural plans became actual demolition. I pressed send. The scheduling confirmation appeared. Email will be delivered at 9:01 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Load calculated. Charges set. Detonation sequence armed. All that remained was to wait for Monday morning and watch their glass house shatter from a safe distance. The doorbell rang at 2:17 a.m. Monday morning. Not a polite single press, but 3 sharp jabs aggressive. Entitled, I knew before I looked through the peephole who would be standing there. Sloan Mercer had driven Ethan home. Her white Mercedes idled in our driveway, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like spotlights on a stage. She stood beside my husband on our porch, her hand proprietary on his elbow. Victory lap, marking territory. The arrogance of it made my teeth ache. I kept the lights warm and welcoming as I opened the door. No dramatic shadows, no horror movie ambiance, just a suburban foyer at 2 a.m, mundane as a Tuesday budget meeting. Ethan forgot his keys, Sloan said, as if she regularly delivered my husband to our door in the small hours. Her voice carried that particular executive resonance, every word weighted with assumed authority. No, I said calmly. He didn't. Ethan's face went through several architectural renovations in 3 seconds: confusion, recognition, fear. His keys were in his pocket. They'd always been in his pocket. This was something else. Your name echoes in my husband's sleep, Ms. Mercer. I kept my voice conversational, as if discussing paint samples. I thought we should meet. Sloane's expression didn't change, a skill learned in boardrooms where showing weakness meant career death, but her fingers tightened on her clutch, knuckles white as primer paint. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she began. No misunderstanding. I reached behind me, pulled out 4 photographs Noah had taken, fanned them on the hallway table like tarot cards predicting disaster: the parking garage, the hotel lobby, the tie adjustment, the ATM camera footage, printed as a still, just documentation. Ethan made a sound like structural failure, something between a gasp and a groan. His legs seemed to recalculate their load-bearing capacity. Mara, he started. I have one question for Ms. Mercer. I turned to her, maintaining the pleasant tone of someone asking about quarterly projections. How many times have you done this in your career? For exactly half a second, her mask slipped. Something flickered in her eyes, not guilt, but calculation. The look of someone counting bodies, measuring blast radiuses. I don't know what you're implying, she said, but her voice had lost its executive timbre. Marcus from 2021, Jennifer from 2022. Both married, both left Argent within 6 months of ending their mentorship with you. I picked up the Hearthline Suites receipt. Always the same hotel, always the same suite, always Tuesday or Thursday. You're not even creative in your predation. You don't understand how business works, Sloan said, recovering some composure. Mentorship requires boundaries, ethics, basic human decency. I set down the receipt with architectural precision. All the things you architect around. Ethan finally found his voice. Mara, please, let's talk about this inside. We are inside. This is my house, built on land I purchased with my inheritance from my father. The man who taught me that structural integrity matters more than aesthetic appeal. I looked at Sloan again. Her transformation was fascinating, from predator to prey in less than 5 minutes. She kept glancing at her Mercedes, calculating escape routes. Tomorrow's town hall should be interesting, I said conversationally. 9 a.m. Isn't it mandatory attendance? Both of them went still as concrete setting. What did you do? Ethan whispered. I documented. What you do with documentation is share it with relevant parties. Mara, this could destroy your career, her pattern of predation, the fiction that Argent Apex maintains about its ethical standards. I shrugged. Architecture is about choosing what to preserve and what to demolish. Sloane's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face drained of color. Someone else was awake, checking emails, seeing subject lines that promised Monday morning disasters. "You sent something already." Her voice cracked like bad foundation. "Scheduled 9:01 a.m. Board of Directors, Legal, HR, Compliance, Ethics Committee." I smiled without warmth. Though someone might be checking their inbox early. Executives do that, don't they? Always ahead of the curve. "You vindictive," Sloan started. "Precise. The word you're looking for is precise." I picked up the photographs, tapped them into a neat stack. Every timestamp verified, every receipt documented, 2 sworn statements from your previous targets, all legal, all factual, all waiting in an encrypted folder that opens in 6 hours and 43 minutes. Ethan swayed. I watched him process the magnitude of the coming collapse, saw him understand that there was no load-bearing wall strong enough to stop this demolition. "The USB in your jacket," I told him quietly, "contains everything. When they call you in, and they will call you in, you'll be carrying your own evidence. There's something poetic about that. Don't you think?" Sloan turned without another word, her heels clicking against our porch like a countdown timer. The Mercedes door slammed. Tires squealed slightly as she reversed the first ungraceful thing I'd seen her do. Ethan stood in our foyer, looking at me like I was a stranger wearing his wife's face. 6 hours and 41 minutes, I said, closing the door with the soft precision of an architect sealing a blueprint. "You should probably get your story straight." He reached for me, but I stepped back, maintaining the professional distance that should exist between people who are about to be strangers. "Don't," I said simply. "The house is in my name. Your things will be in storage by noon. Lena will send you the unit number." 12 years. Mara. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything. That's why this precision matters. I walked to my office, leaving him standing in the foyer like a structural element that no longer served any purpose. Behind me, I heard him check his jacket pocket, the rustle of fabric as he found the USB drive. In 6 hours and 39 minutes, it would all be over. The controlled demolition would be complete. The email sat in my outbox like a shaped charge, countdown timer displaying in red digits 5 hours, 12 minutes until detonation. I refined it once more, adding a single line to the bottom, all documentation independently verified by Keats Investigative Services. License, Dark CO PI 2847. Noah's credentials would add weight to the evidence. Make dismissal impossible. Recipients list. Verified Richard Steinberg. Board Chair Patricia Wu. Chief Legal Counsel Dmitry Volkov. Head of Human Resources Sarah Chen Ramirez. Chief Compliance Officer Full Ethics Committee Distribution List. Subject line. Refined Pattern Liability Risk. Immediate attention required. The beauty of corporate communication was its predictability. That subject line would trigger automated flags in 3 different systems. Legal would see liability, HR would catch pattern, and compliance would lock onto immediate. By 9:02 a.m., phones would be ringing in cascading panic. I drove to my office at Solace Atelier at 6 a.m., needing the familiar space while the fuse burned down. The early morning light through the drafting room windows was clean, architectural. I pulled out the USB drive's twin identical silver casing, identical contents, but this one would stay with me. Evidence preservation, Noah had called it. Always maintain redundancy in critical systems. My phone buzzed. "Lena, storage unit secured, 1247 Industrial Way, Unit B31. Movers arrive at 10 a.m. The unit number was coincidental, the same as Sloane's regular hotel suite. Sometimes the universe provided its own poetry. At 7:15 a.m., I received an unexpected text from Noah. FYI, Sloane Mercer accessed her Argent email at 3:47 a.m. from her home IP. She's been active since. Building a defense or planning offense? Stay sharp. Of course she was. Predators don't become prey without fighting. But she was working with incomplete information, unaware of the sworn statements, the full pattern analysis, the years of documentation I'd compressed into one devastating package. I opened my laptop, pulled up Argent's corporate website. The town hall banner stretched across the homepage, Q3 Review and Strategic Planning, 9 a.m. MT, Main Conference Center. Live streamed to all remote employees. Recorded for posterity. The perfect stage. 8:30 a.m. I made one final addition to the package, a timeline visualization I'd created, showing Sloane's pattern over 3 years, color-coded by victim, with overlays showing performance reviews, transfers, and departures. It looked like a disease spreading through an organizational chart. Any board member would understand the liability implications immediately. 8:45 a.m. My phone rang. Ethan. "Please don't do this." His voice was raw, probably hadn't slept since our 217 confrontation. "It's already done. The email is scheduled. I'll deny everything. You're carrying the evidence in your pocket." Silence. Then, "How did you—" "You always put your USB drives in your left jacket pocket. 12 years of habits. Ethan, I know your patterns better than you do. This will destroy everything I've worked for." "No. What you did destroyed everything we worked for. This is just documentation. Sloane says she can protect me if. Sloane will sacrifice you in seconds if it saves her. You're not special to her. Ethan, you're Tuesday and Thursday, 11:30 to 1 a.m. Suite 1247. You're a pattern, not a person. 8:52 a.m. I pulled up the email one final time. My finger hovered over the manual send button. I could trigger it now, or let the schedule hold. 8 more minutes of their ignorance, their false sense of safety. I let the timer run. 8:58 a.m. I texted Lena. Municipal clock tower should chime soon. 8:59 a.m. Through my office window, I could see Brookhaven District coming alive. The Argent Apex building stood 15 blocks away, its glass facade catching morning sun. Somewhere inside, 200 employees were filing into the main conference room. Sloane would be at the executive table, polished and prepared. Ethan would be in the mid-level section, USB drive burning in his pocket. 9 a.m. The email sent. I watched the delivery confirmation appear. Message delivered to 12 recipients. Then I waited, counting seconds like a demolition expert waiting for the blast wave. 9:01 a.m. My phone exploded with notifications. The data room access log showed simultaneous entry from 8 different IP addresses. Legal was in, HR was in, compliance was in. 9:02 a.m. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Patricia Wu, Chief Legal. Please confirm your identity and availability for immediate discussion." I didn't respond. Let them marinate in the evidence. 9:03 a.m. Ethan's personal email would be receiving my second message now. The one about the USB, the parking access, the storage unit, the digital equivalent of changing the locks. 9:04 a.m. Noah texted, "Sloane's corporate keycard just went inactive. Happened fast." 9:05 a.m. Another unknown number calling, then another. I let them all go to voicemail, watching the Argent building in the distance. Was the town hall continuing? Had they cleared the room? Were security guards already escorting Sloane and Ethan to separate conference rooms for questioning? 9:07 a.m. Lena. Clock tower chimed, whole city heard it. I closed my laptop, locked the USB drive in my office safe, and pulled out a fresh sheet of drafting paper. Time to design something new. Something with better structural integrity. Something built on ground I could trust. My phone continued its panicked buzzing texts, calls, emails from addresses I recognized and ones I didn't. The blast wave expanding. Secondary collapses beginning. But I was already sketching, my hand steady as I drew the first lines of whatever came next. Clean lines, true angles, no hidden structural weaknesses. Behind me, through the window, the Argent Apex building stood unchanged. But inside, Everything was falling. 8:59 a.m. The Argent Apex main conference room hummed with Monday morning energy. 200 employees arranged in corporate hierarchy executives at the horseshoe table facing the room, middle management in the center sections, juniors along the walls. The projection screen displayed Q3 Strategic Review in Argent's signature blue. 9 a.m. Richard Steinberg, board chair, approached the podium. The wall clock's minute hand clicked to 12. Somewhere in the city, church bells began their morning count. 9:01 a.m. The first phone vibrated on the executive table. Patricia Wu, chief legal, glanced at her screen. Her face shifted from annoyance to alarm in 2 seconds. She opened her laptop, fingers flying across keys. 9:01 and 30 seconds. Dmitry Volkov's phone lit up. The HR head's expression went rigid as he read. He immediately looked across the room, searching. His eyes found Sloane Mercer, who was still reviewing her presentation notes, unaware. 9:02 a.m. Sarah Chen Ramirez, chief compliance officer, stood abruptly, phone pressed to her ear. She moved toward Patricia Wu, her heels clicking sharp staccato against the conference room floor. They bent their heads together over Patricia's laptop screen. The data room was open. Files were being accessed simultaneously from multiple terminals. The timeline visualization filled Patricia's screen, 3 years of pattern behavior mapped in devastating clarity. 9:02 and 45 seconds. Richard Steinberg's assistant approached him at the podium, whispered urgently. His keynote smile faltered. He looked toward the executive table where a crisis was silently blooming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steinberg said, voice cutting through the morning chatter. "We need to take a brief recess. Please remain available. We'll reconvene shortly." Confusion rippled through the room. Town halls didn't pause. Strategic reviews didn't recess 3 minutes after starting. 9:03 a.m. Sloane's phone buzzed. Her face went white as she read the subject line appearing in her inbox. Repattern liability risk immediate review required. Below it, another access credentials suspended pending investigation. She tried to maintain composure, but her hand shook as she reached for her laptop. The Argent logo appeared, then an error message. User authentication failed. Contact IT administrator. Ethan, seated 6 rows back, felt his phone vibrate. My personal message had arrived. His hand moved involuntarily to his jacket pocket, finding the USB drive that now felt like evidence at a crime scene, which, technically, it was. 9:04 a.m. Patricia Wu approached Sloane's chair. "We need you to come with us. Now." "This is a misunderstanding," Sloane said, her executive voice trying to maintain authority. "Bring your devices. All of them." Patricia's tone suggested this wasn't a request. Security appeared at the conference room doors, not the usual building guards, but the investigation team. Discreet suits, serious faces, the kind called for corporate emergencies. 9:05 a.m. Dmitry Volkov was now standing by Ethan's row. "Mr. Hale, please come with me." The room had gone cemetery silent. 200 people pretending not to watch as their VP of operations and a senior strategist were escorted out through different doors. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed harsher, turning the glass walls into mirrors that reflected everyone's shocked faces. 9:06 a.m., someone whispered. "What the hell just happened?" Richard Steinberg returned to the podium, his composed facade cracking slightly. "Due to an urgent matter requiring immediate attention, today's town hall is postponed. Please return to your regular duties. Your managers will update you as appropriate." But nobody moved. They sat frozen, watching the executive table where Patricia Wu was now collecting devices from Sloane's workspace, dropping them into evidence bags with practiced efficiency. 9:07 a.m. Through the glass walls of Conference Room A, visible to half the main room, Sloane was seated across from legal and compliance. Her body language had transformed from predator to prey, shoulders curved inward, hands clasped, the power pose abandoned. Conference room B, on the opposite side, held Ethan. He sat alone, the USB drive now on the table in front of him like a confession waiting to be signed. Through the glass, employees could see him holding his head in his hands. 908A, The whispers started. Check your email. Look at the company directory. Sloane's profile is gone. Ethan's calendar just went dark. The Argent Apex building had 142 windows visible from the street. At 9:08 a.m., figures appeared at most of them employees drawn to look outside, as if the answer to the morning's chaos might be written in the sky. 9:09 a.m. The first media query arrived at Argent's public relations desk. Can you comment on reports of an executive suspension related to misconduct allegations? The municipal clock tower, 6 blocks away, continued its morning chime cycle. 9 resonant notes that echoed across Brookhaven District, marking time as 2 careers ended in glass rooms while 200 employees watched. In Conference Room A, Sloane was being presented with the timeline visualization. Her pattern of behavior laid out in corporate colors, irrefutable as architectural blueprints. In Conference Room B, Ethan was learning that the USB in his pocket had been accessed by security systems the moment he'd badged into the building. Every file opened, cataloged, preserved. 9:10 a.m. Patricia Wu's team had already contacted the 2 previous victims whose sworn statements anchored my documentation. Legal preservation notices were being generated. The corporate machinery of scandal management was spinning up to full speed. The town hall that was meant to celebrate quarterly victories had become a theater for public downfall. The glass walls that Argent Apex had installed to represent transparency had become a fishbowl where everyone could watch the predators become prey. 9:11 a.m. My phone buzzed with a message from Lena. News travels fast in hospitals. 3 nurses who used to work at Argent are sharing their own Sloane stories. The pattern was even bigger than you found. I didn't respond. I was already sketching my next project, something built on bedrock, with load-bearing walls you could trust and windows that let in light without exposing you to predators. The controlled demolition was complete. The glass walls had done their job. Conference Room A had become a dissection table. The ethics committee had arrived 5 executives in crisis mode suits, their faces professional masks hiding personal calculations about contamination radius. Sloane sat at the center, her power evaporating like morning condensation on glass. The data room contents spread across 3 laptop screens. Patricia Wu clicked through the timeline visualization with surgical precision. 2021, Marcus Jeffries, 6-month pattern, departure with NDA. 2022, Jennifer Cho, 4-month pattern, transfer, then resignation. She paused at the 3rd section. 2024 to present, Ethan Hale, still active until today. These are mischaracterizations of professional mentorship, Sloane said, but her voice had lost its executive authority. We have sworn statements suggesting otherwise. Patricia pulled up Noah's documentation. Hotel records showing a pattern of Tuesday-Thursday bookings, always the same suite, always coinciding with your Operations Sync meetings that appear on no official calendar. The chief compliance officer, Sarah Chen Ramirez, leaned forward. The liability exposure alone could trigger shareholder lawsuits. The pattern suggests systematic abuse of power dynamics. Through the glass wall, the main conference room was emptying in slow motion. Employees lingered, pretending to gather belongings while watching Sloane's empire collapse in real time. 9:23 a.m. Security activated the emergency protocols. Sloane's badge was physically collected. Her company laptop was imaged on site. Her cell phone was requested for review. She refused, which was her right. But the refusal itself became another data point in the investigation file. Conference Room B told a different story. Ethan had confessed everything the moment they'd opened the USB drive he'd carried into the building. Each file matched what legal had already reviewed from the data room. He'd literally hand-delivered his own evidence. "I thought I was special," he told Dmitry Volkov, the words cracking like bad concrete. "I thought it was real. According to these documents, you were the third in a pattern. Did you know about the others?" "Not until this morning." Ethan stared at the USB drive. "My wife, ex-wife, she knew. She documented everything. Your wife did this. Mara doesn't do anything halfway. She's an architect. She builds things to last, or she demolishes them completely." 9:37 a.m. The suspension letters were generated. Immediate administrative leave pending full investigation. Sloan Mercer, 15 years of climbing Argent's ladder, suspended in 37 minutes. Ethan Hale, 6 years of strategic consulting, ended in less time than his usual morning coffee run. Security escorted them separately to retrieve personal items. No cardboard boxes like in movies, just clear plastic bags, contents visible to everyone they passed. The walk of shame through Argent's open office plan, past the 100-plus desks of people they'd managed, mentored, manipulated. Someone had already updated the company directory. Sloane's name now appeared in gray italics, inactive under review. Ethan's simply vanished, like he'd never existed in Argent's ecosystem. 9:48 a.m. Both were escorted to the parking garage through different exits. Sloane to her white Mercedes in the executive section, Ethan to his Audi in the general lot. Their badges wouldn't open the garage gates anymore. Security had to manually override the system to let them leave. 10:02 a.m. Patricia Wu convened an emergency all-hands meeting. Damage control mode. She stood where Richard Steinberg had started the morning. But now the projection screen displayed only the Argent logo and one word, integrity. Effective immediately. Argent Apex has suspended 2 employees pending investigation into violations of our code of conduct. We take all allegations seriously. We are committed to maintaining a workplace built on respect, professionalism, and ethical behavior. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. Everyone had watched it happen through glass walls that hid nothing. Any employee with concerns about workplace conduct is encouraged to report through proper channels. Retaliation will not be tolerated. The subtext was clear. There might be other Sloanes, other patterns, other glass houses ready to shatter. 10:15 a.m. The media had the story. Executive suspension rocks Argent Apex. Power dynamics under scrutiny at major consulting firm. Pattern of misconduct alleged in corporate scandal. Sloane's LinkedIn profile went private within the hour. Ethan's disappeared entirely. 10:43 a.m. I received a final text from Noah. Both subjects exited Argent property. Sloane drove home. Ethan drove to storage unit on Industrial Way. Investigation concluded. I paid his final invoice and added a bonus. Good architecture requires good contractors. The municipal clock tower chimed 11 times. I closed my sketchbook. Having completed the preliminary design for my next project, a women's shelter in downtown Brookhaven, something built to protect, not prey, something with walls you could trust. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Ethan, 12 from unknown Argent numbers, and 1 from Lena, proud of you. I didn't return any calls. The demolition was complete. The lot was cleared. The USB drive that started everything sat in my office safe, a monument to what happens when you build your life on someone else's lies. Sloane thought power protected predators. Ethan thought he was special enough to be the exception. They both forgot the first rule of architecture. Every structure, no matter how impressive, can be brought down if you know exactly where to place the charges. The Argent Apex building still stood against the Colorado sky, its glass reflecting clouds and possibilities. But inside, the careful architecture of power had shifted. Conference rooms had become confessionals. Glass walls had become mirrors that reflected the truth. And somewhere in Hollister Ridge, in a house now empty of lies, the hallway light still glowed like an exit sign not marking disaster anymore, but indicating the way forward into something cleaner, stronger, and entirely my own. The controlled demolition was complete. There would be no rebuilding on this ground. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your perspectives and experiences make these stories richer for our entire community.